and Safety Committee. Pursuant to Council Rule 28, the public comment period at committee meetings is limited to items that appear on the committee agenda. All public comment speakers must present proof of Tennessee residency. We do not currently have anyone who is signed up for public comment. Is there anybody in the gallery who would like to speak who has not signed up? I am seeing head shakes of no, so we will move on. We do have a quorum today with myself, council members Benton, Bradford, Gregg, Vice Chair Huffman, Council Member Nash, Chair Prepty, and Council Member Weiner. I'm sorry, and now Councilmember Kimbrough. Thank you for pointing her out. So we've exceeded quorum, so we're going to move on. All right. The very first thing we're going to do before we get into legislation is Councilmember Druffel has a resolution that was deferred to the second meeting in August. And so as part of that kind of discussion around youth, thought it was appropriate to invite Director Hildreth to come and share a little bit about her vision related to the Office of Youth Safety, which was funded not this current budget, but the previous budget, and then she was hired very recently. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and you can start sharing about yourself and the department and everything else. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me make sure that your microphone is turned on here. Okay, let's try again.
Thank you, Chair Evans. Good afternoon, esteemed council members. My name is Phyllis Hildreth. I have been sitting in this seat for just under 90 days, and it is an honor and privilege to be here addressing you. I hope that given that brief background, you will understand that this is just the barest outline of the beginning of the work that we hope to do together, but it is work that is grounded in very long conversations and deliberations that we have watched you move through, particularly over the last 2 years, receiving the public testimony of youth in our community who say we want to be safe in Metro Davidson County. Help us to be safe. You heard them, we hear them, and now this is the briefest introduction as to how we would like to move forward in addressing that mandate. The Office of Youth Safety was first funded in June 2024 by Metropolitan Nashville Council and affirmed on November 27, 2024 by Mayor's Executive Order 53 and was activated by the appointment of this Director of Youth Safety on May 12th of this year. Its existence is the direct result of persistent advocacy and public testimony by youth coordinated through the Southern Movement Committee and other youth in this city, representing multiple communities in Davidson County, united in their outrage by the pervasive gun violence that threatens their lives. The Office of Youth Safety weaves existing Metro systems and services, supplemented by private individuals, organizations, and resources to create and sustain safe, viable community space for our youth's growth and flourishing as they progress from childhood to adulthood. The definition of youth, Metro youth, and so that's capital M, capital Y, so we'll be talking about my safety when we're talking about Metro safety to make sure that we are truly being youth-centered in our vision and movement. Metro youth include all persons between the ages of middle school attendance and their 25th birthday who live within or enrolled at an accredited school, college, or skills development program within Davidson County. There are 3 action arenas that we have come to define as being places where we can impact and actually create sense of safety for youth in this county. The first are my safe places. We're talking about home, school and work, and what the urban planners call third spaces. And we're going to talk more about that. Where do we all go when we're not at home, we're not at work, and we just want to be ourselves? So what are the third spaces for youth, and how do we preserve them and make them safe? My safe pleasures, and yes, I use that word intentionally, because when we're home, we have to abide by the rules of the house. Amen? And when we're at school, we definitely have work that is set before us that we must do. But there has to be some place for all humans, and particularly the humans that are growing and moving from childhood to adulthood to sometimes just be in a joyful way. So we have looked carefully at the pleasures in two realms. Where should can youth in this county play safely? And then where can they rest and have peace safely? One of the things we hear repeatedly from the youth that we sit and listen to is that we're overscheduled. There is so much going on. There's so much we have to do. Sometimes I just need to sit quietly. I need to calm down. And I ask you to hold on to that thought, because sitting quietly and calming down is one of the things that makes each one of us not only safer to ourselves, but safer to the other people we interact with. And that is a part of youth safety. And then finally, we think about my safe problem solving. When youth are asking these questions, how do I survive amid chaos? How do I manage my strong emotions? How do I manage conflict with others? How do I enter the next stage of my life? That question is asked by the middle schooler on this first day of school, headed towards high school. It's asked by the high school senior who is about to step out into maybe college or maybe not. How do I make viable decisions? Decisions that are sustaining and sustainable for myself and for my community. And then maybe most importantly, how do I ask for help? The Office of Youth Safety wants to weave this work. Now we go, Madam Director, that's a whole lot of talk, but I didn't hear you talk about gun safety. I didn't hear you talk about social emotional learning and restorative practices. Not specifically, that's the language of the accountable adults. That's the way that we look at this work. We need to do two things. One is to make sure that we build systems of accountability so that we are regularly and rigorously listening to the youth. One of our initiatives will be to stand up the My Voice, Metro Youth Voice, whether that is an online platform, whether it is a series of dialogues that we schedule around the city based in schools, parks, libraries, where the youth can lead dialogue circles and come up with an agenda to let us know what makes them feel safe. What does safety look like, feel like, smell like? What would they like to do to blow off steam in a safe way? And then we take that information to the second part of our work, which is to establish an interdepartmental council of all of those systems and services that face youth work and concern. What does that look like? For us to sit and bring together parks, libraries, arts. I even put down on my first bullet Sports Authority, and then I looked it up to see what Sports Authority does, and it's like, oh, they only do professional sports, and I'm not going to be deterred by that. So maybe sometimes we need to talk to Sports Authority too, to supplement the good youth sports programming that we have in schools. But do you see where we're going? We're going to have the arts there. We want to have as partners Metro Human Relations Commission and also the Innovation Office from the Department of Finance. Why? Because once we dream big, once we curate and document a list and inventory of all of these systems and services, particularly in the third space, that can support this work, then putting them on the entire map of the county, we have to see where we're good, where we have holes. Sometimes we have the systems and services. What we heard from one of our community members who is on good relationship with the persons who maybe have access to some of those weapons we're concerned about. Anyway, in that conversation, one of the things we heard is the library after-school program is great. The parks are good, but they close too early. They close at 6 o'clock. I left that meeting and I went to speak to some of our Metro colleagues who are responsible for those systems and services. And I said, if there was some way that this Office of Youth Safety could work with you to figure out what the retail cost would be to expand hours and what that would look like and what it would take, and then we can bring that and present that to those who create the budget and push it through. Would that be useful? And there was a vigorous head nod. Sometimes we have not, because not only do we ask not, but we don't think together about what the possibilities would be. This Office of Youth Safety understands its mandate from Executive Order 53, and it understands that its work must be theoretically grounded, supported by data, ethical, effective, and cost-effective for every single one of us taxpayers. It needs to serve this entire county. We want to do the assessment. We want to check in regularly with you to share our findings, to show where we think the gaps are. And most importantly, as I conclude my portion of the remarks here, we want to hear from you. During this last 90 days, one of the things I do when I try to explain this work to what I call the accountable adults, I put that little tag on it because I'm like, no, we don't just adult, we have to be accountable in this thing, is I ask everybody to close their eyes and think back to that summer when they were moving from freshman year in high school to sophomore year. What was the playlist? Where were you? Who were you hanging with? What did you guys do for fun? For me, that summer was split. I spent the first half in Enid, Oklahoma with my grandmama, hanging out, being the new girl in town. We were riding bikes and walking and dancing on the corner and going to church youth group afterwards. And then when I went back home to the San Francisco Bay Area, we're riding rapid transit, roaming all over the place. Nobody had a car, nobody needed it. We could earn just enough money with our little after-school summer jobs to go bowling, to go to the movie, to laugh with each other, and to feel safe. Now think about your story and think about what you know of this county right now, of all of our youth here between the ages of 10 and up to 25, and ask yourself, how would they answer? How can they answer? Are you satisfied with that answer? And what will we do together to make that answer better? This is the beginning of the work. I hope that it serves your vision and our shared commitment to our future. I'll take your questions at this time if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hildreth. Let me recognize Councilmember Weiner, and we'll go to Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you because this is genius. There is so much that needs to happen, and I'll just share for a second. I am the council member that oversees, if you will, Red Caboose Park, where we had the murder out there. And in response to that, several of us got together and have been looking and have identified a safe place, is what we're calling it, for the kids to have a place, their place. And we're lucky enough to have Marcel Hernandez with Be About Change, who's out there running a program, and we've spoken with NASA, and all that's continuing. I would love to sit down and have an extended conversation with you. I am knocked over, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Porterfield.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Mrs. Hildreth, for all of your thoughtful work on this. We could not have a better leader to do this work in this moment. So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you have already done. We are excited about where this office is going to go. We thank you for continuing to be grounded in the community and making sure that community voices are included in this conversation. But I just wanted to publicly thank you for everything that you've done and just your continued commitment to not only the city and our youth, but making sure that everyone has a voice in this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, other questions for Director Hildreth? Let me, I'll say that I wrote down when you said existing metro systems and services, and I was like, existing systems, because one of the things I've always struggled with is sometimes our systems are terrible. So I really like the idea that you are wanting to bring this kind of intergovernmental department conversation, because I think that that is really needed. And I don't hear, I feel like at my vantage point, I don't hear enough of that. So I appreciate that you're going to be working on that. And then I hope the health department's probably on your list because of all their effort around community safety. So thank you for that too.
Thank you. I have my first meeting with representatives from the health department tomorrow, so.
Oh, perfect. Okay, very good. How about any other questions for Director Hildreth? All right, thank you so much for being here and giving us a preview. And I know you just got started, so you've got a lot to work on. And so hopefully in the future, you'll be able to come back and share more information. So thank you so much. Thank you. All right. We're going to transition and we're going to pick up with the resolution that Councilmember Druffel has deferred to the second meeting in August, RS 2025-1100. And so I want to recognize him so he can speak to the resolution and kind of react, to what he heard from Director Hildreth, and then also kind of the future of what his vision is related to the resolution.
Yeah, thanks, Sherry. I think you gave me an hour for this. Is that right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. First of all, gosh, Dr. Hildreth, we got a home run here, and Councilor Porterfield is moving us in the right direction. It's fantastic. Because this all started a while back. And so if you look at some of the history, and I think I made a copy for all of you that said youth opportunities, sort of the context of the history where you go back to Purcell in the early 2000s to Mayor Dean, who had a master plan, to Mayor Berry, who had the early version of Power Youth and tried to get 5,000 youth in summer programming. That just went up and down. And you can imagine when you gravitate from program to program, you lose the continuity and you lose the effort and you lose the support from partnerships and et cetera. So with that, I had the opportunity to talk to Mayor Cooper a few years back, and we talked about youth, and he allowed me to lead a youth task force. That the goal is to look at career development at the same time as youth development. And so we had a task force for about 9-10 months, and we came up with 5 or 6 recommendations. I won't go into all of them, but the overall goal was we weren't going to be able to do it without some kind of governance that will sustain us over years. With the fluctuation from program to program with youth, you can imagine if you were one of those 5,000 youth in Mary Berry's, and then the next year you weren't there, you didn't have a program or you didn't have a support. That inconsistency really caused a lot of problems where the youth lost interest or, understanding that they weren't going to get the support that they needed. With that, we had several recommendations. But again, the governance model is just to come up with a sustainable model that says year after year, we have a trajectory. And I think when I look back on this is I had the chance to be one of the first volunteers in the academies of Nashville. And I think we had a fair amount of success. We were a national model. But I was there the first day when we were like, how do we increase graduation rates? We came up with a vision, not mine, but an overall vision that we were going to increase graduation rates. And then how do you get there? What's the plan? And we said, well, creating relevance and project-based learning and mentorship improves that youth and helps them get to the next point. So we went through this model. With that, we went to the community and we went out and got, I was chair of the hospitality academies, for example, and we were able to get 32 hotel restaurant partners within 3 months. All the other academies did the same thing, and they all jumped behind that vision. The vision was we were going to increase graduation rates. Increased graduation rates is going to increase our workforce. We are going to do some great things. And again, we became a national model that, everybody sustained it. It's just phenomenal. So how do we carry that same idea in this going forward where we try to improve our youth and create opportunities? The task force came up with sort of the execution of the plan is programming. Summer programs and after-school programs really provides a significant improvement for youth, not only if you do some educational components, they don't lose some of the education over the summer. They have something to do. You create activities, you create interests, you create career opportunities. With that, you can build some holistic development with that. And so the comprehensive plan of all this was positive, and it was founded on research. I have mountains of research. We had talked to other cities like Boston and Chicago that did these, and they found a lot of success when it's maintained. Once you branch off, you lose that chance of success. So the goal here is, I don't think we need to, we got a great leader in this. I'm really excited. But when you look at all the aspects that contribute and support long-term youth growth, they're all buried into building a long-term strategy. And that long-term strategy, Dr. Hildreth is obviously a very advanced leader. They can figure that out. But I just want to make sure the goal of this resolution is to make sure that this doesn't fall off, that all the growth, all the learnings we have continue beyond administration after administration. If you really look at the history, it's a generational problem, but we try to solve it in 2 to 4 years or whatever thing we have in terms of administration to administration. We don't really look at it and say, here's our 10-year goal, here's our 15-year goal, and wrap ourselves around it and build something to support that long term. And that's really this resolution. It's not telling anybody how to do it. It's saying the intention is let's try to figure out a way to make that work. And it's asking the mayor to do that. And I talked to Dr. Hildreth, and I think she has a similar interest. And that would be my intention of this resolution. At one time I suggested a Department of Youth Safety, if we can make that work and expand it. Programming improves youth justice issues by 20%. So if we can do summer youth programming, we can actually prevent a lot of people going into youth safety, or at least help on that side of things. So that's what this is all about. I could go on for a long time, but the reality is that is sort of this in a nutshell. I'll be glad to take any questions. But I would like to move this forward simply to do this with the confidence level that Dr. Hildreth will be able to make this all work.
Thank you, Councilmember Druffel. How about any questions? Of course, it'll be officially back in committee in 2 weeks. So you may need to process and kind of think through what Director Hildreth shared, and of course the resolution before you have any questions, and that's totally fine. All right, I'm not seeing any. So Councilmember, we'll see you back in 2 weeks. So thanks for coming. All right, we're going to transition into our legislative agenda now. I do have a tentative consent agenda for everything that is on our agenda today. Okay, I got a thumbs up. Anybody have anything they'd like to pull off of my tentative consent agenda? I'll go ahead and start reading everything, and then I'll check in again and see. All right, item number 1 is RS 2025-1380, a resolution approving 4 grant subcontracts between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Juvenile Justice Center, Metro Juvenile Court, and Southern Word, Youth Villages, Counterpunch Youth Academy, and Health Connect America, and amendments thereto. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and others. Item number 2, RS 2025-1384, a resolution appropriating $50,000 from the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Action Commission and Music City Construction Careers, and approving a grant contract by and between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Action Commission and Music City Construction Careers for the provision of a workforce development initiative that prepares Nashville residents for successful careers in the skilled construction trades through apprenticeship, readiness training, industry-recognized certifications, and job placement support. Sponsors Sepulveda, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 3, RS 2025-1389, a resolution appropriating a total of $50,000 from the Nashville Public Library to ASMT Incorporated to implement the Empower program for adult autistic people. Sponsors Porterfield, Gadd, Evans, and others. Item number 4, RS 2025-1391, a resolution approving an agreement by and between the Safety Net Consortium of Middle Tennessee, LLC, and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health, to participate as a member organization in the Safety Net Consortium of Middle Tennessee to advocate, build capacity, and coordinate efforts to improve the health of the medically underserved. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 5, RS 2025-1392, a resolution approving an agreement between the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health and the University of Memphis School of Public Health to provide clinical experience opportunities for its students. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 6, RS 2025-1393, a resolution accepting a grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Office of Family Safety to host a Tennessee Family Justice Centers statewide conference to enhance the statewide network of family justice centers and increase the capacity and skill of statewide teams. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 7, RS 2025-1394, a resolution accepting a Project Safe Neighborhoods grant from the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration, Office of Criminal Justice Programs to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department to reduce gun-related violence in Nashville by providing funding for overtime for the investigation of violent crimes involving guns. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 8, RS 2025-1395, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the Nashville Fire Department, Fire Marshal's Office, NFD, and the City of Berry Hill or Berry Hill for the provision of fire and building safety inspection services for Berry Hill. Sponsors Porterfield and Evans. Item number 9, RS 2025-1396, a resolution approving an application for a fire prevention and safety grant from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Nashville Fire Department to provide funding to support 2 origin and cause arson investigators and the purchase of a smart fire safety trailer for use in educating the public about fire prevention and safety. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Huffman, and others. Do I have a motion? Yes. Okay, hold on just a second. I'm going to recognize Chair Porterfield.
Thank you, Chair. Can we pull RS 2025-1384 from the consent agenda? It's item number 2.
Yes, we can do that. Okay, any other items that need to come off the consent agenda? All right, do we have a renewed motion for everything else on the consent agenda? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Anyone in opposition? Anyone not voting? All right, so you recommend approval, 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Now let's go, do I have to read it again? All right, we're going to go to item number 2, which was pulled off consent, RS 2025-1384. Do I have a motion on that one? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, we got 1 not voting. All right, so that's 9 in favor, 0 against, and 1 not voting on item number 2. Okay, so that's our proposed consent agenda. We do have a speaker that I'm going to invite up in just a second. I do want, Mr. Sharp, would you mind coming to the podium? I just want to ask a follow-up question from last meeting. At our last meeting, we were talking about the ELC grant, and I know you and Chair Gadd had been in contact and everything. I have not found out or asked if there was an update related to the discussion around with the ELC grant and the other grants that were kind of restored to Davidson County. What does that mean? Does it mean people will be rehired? Does it mean, okay, so you're shaking your head no. Could you share a little bit more information?
Yes, ma'am. With respect to the questions that Council Lady Gadd was asking, I went to our HR department and got a full narrative of everything that had been done and forwarded that to her. And she has not followed up in any way. She just said thank you. So hopefully that answered her question.
Okay, perfect.
With respect to the 3 grants, one of them, which ends next month, we have been scrambling to try to find a way to do something useful with that money in that short period of time and have a plan that we are trying to push forward. It will be primarily a media buy, I believe, is the idea. Because it's hard to hire somebody for 25 days.
Well, let me ask you a question, and I guess the one that ends next month, as far as the grants that were restored, do you recall what the value of the grants and kind of what their dates are for, that we had left in the runway?
That was the only one that had come directly to us.
Oh, okay.
So we're dealing with it unilaterally. We can't do that with the other 2. So that
Because
is
the other two are coming from the state?
They're federal money, but they were allocated via the state.
Got
So
it.
the money was actually sent back to the Tennessee Department of Health. So with reference to the community health worker grant, Kimberly, you remember how much that was? I want to say it was, shoot, I don't remember, maybe $600,000. I want to, something in that neighborhood.
And that's the one that you think you're going to be
We're
doing
going
the
to spend
media
as much
buying?
of it in a responsible manner as we can. We're not going to spend it just to be throwing money out the door, but
Sure.
we have some things we think would be useful to do.
And then thank you for that. And then the ones that went through or kind of flew, and went back to the state. So has there been any communication from the state about like how it'll impact us?
Most recently, Monday, Friday. The acting director, Dr. Ariel, has been in touch with him ever since those came back to the state to see what was happening. The most recent development is, he said, we believe we're going to go ahead and push those down the line as they were before, and that they will, and I quote, move forward at the speed of government.
Okay. And then when do those expire? Do you recall? Those are the
a lot longer
2026?
timeline. Yeah, the ELC grant goes through, I believe, it may be in the fall of next year, and one of the other ones ends, I believe, at the end of our fiscal year.
So basically, I guess when those other two that are coming from the state will work through whatever their processes are, at that point, you will then kind of determine, like, is there, what it would look like to potentially rehire? I'm trying to make the connection, like, is there money coming back where we could rehire some of these folks? Or are we basically saying we're not going to do that?
Well, there may be some cases where we could. It's just to say, we've got a grant here for 8 months. You want a job for 8 months. Some people might actually jump at that. But
Yeah.
It's not the likeliest place to look to spend the money. Where we might spend it for personnel is with contract people. So that if we need some people to do some work that we don't have on hand, that we can't repurpose for whatever reason, then we might very well use some of the contract agencies that we use for various things.
Okay, so there may be contract opportunities, I guess, in the future, depending on kind of how it all flows through and the timing and like when the ending of the grant occurs.
Correct.
Okay, because then I kind of wonder, and maybe, Mr. Rosenberg, maybe this is a question for us to talk about or you to take back to somebody, because then I wonder what's the point of going through the lawsuit? Like if we don't end up with, like a plan of like, and maybe that's a bigger conversation about grant money in general, if it's rescinded, like what's the plan if it's taken away? And then if it's not going to track to something that is meaningful. And I appreciate that you guys are looking at how to spend it responsibly and all that other stuff. And I don't have any qualms about that, but then it feels like a lot of effort, maybe for not other than like, hey, we won a lawsuit. And that's valuable too, I know, but.
And I think that was sort of as a matter of principle.
Yeah.
And it could have been that they could have said, well, all right, since we have had a hiatus here, then we'll extend the period, which would make it easier if we did need to hire people. To date, they have not seen fit to do that. So we will again find the most we hope helpful and responsible way to use that money. And I will report to you whenever it gets to us. I'll let you know.
Okay,
And
that's cool.
Try to give you as best idea I can what we're trying to do with it.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you jumping the line before, because it's on my mind. I didn't want to forget. So thank you for answering that question. And did you have anything you need to tell anybody while you're up there? Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Well, then we are going to invite our guest to come forward. This is Miss Verna Wyatt, and she is with Tennessee Voices for Victims. And I invited her specifically, and you're welcome to come down here. You can face everybody. I invited her specifically because we have a lot of conversations about safety issues. She has come several times to speak at public comment with her and her organization's perspective. And I wanted her to kind of ground us in, the challenges that victims face whenever they're victims of crime. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come today.
Thank you for what you do, because you don't have an easy job, because you're not going to please everybody. But the one thing that all of us should have in common is public safety. Crime can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter what color you are or how rich you are or how intelligent you are. you can be a victim of crime. And I think for the most part, most of us are insulated. I think it's a self-defense mechanism. We don't really want to believe that something really horrible could happen to us. And, I can speak to that personally because, I'd see things on television and my heart would go out to the people, but then my life would go on. When you're a victim of crime, your life doesn't go on. In fact, you don't have that same old life anymore. You have to recreate a new normal for your life, and it takes a lot of work. When my sister-in-law was kidnapped, raped, and murdered, that was just so, there was a moment. And so it took a lot. And one of the things that you all may not know about, that I want to brag on, in Nashville, through the police department, for over 30 years, they've had a unit of trained counselors. So any victim of crime in Nashville can get professional one-on-one counseling for free. And they're experts because all they deal with are crime victims, rape victims, robbery victims, kidnapping victims, homicide victims. In fact, every year, maybe you've noticed that we have something called a Season to Remember out at Centennial Park, where homicide victims are invited to come and remember the person that they loved during the holidays. Well, the police department, this counseling group, has been a major player in that. And our agency has chaired it for decades because it's important that people, especially people in the community, when we have this Season to Remember, we have the district attorney there, we have the U.S. attorney there, we have the police chief there, and then we have the district attorney. All the people, all of the players in the justice system in Davidson County are there. And they're reminded of why they're doing their job. They're reminded how they want to prevent that kind of pain from happening again. So my agency is not necessarily a direct service agency. We support boots on the ground. We support other agencies. We do help victims connect to services that will help them in their journey to put their life back together. When my sister-in-law was raped and murdered, I took advantage of the Nashville counseling. My brother-in-law took advantage of it. He said, at the time, Amy Griffith was the counselor, and he said, Amy Griffith saved my life, and I believe it. And I've heard so many victims say that about the counseling service there, because you have to work through your trauma. So now we have our own agency, and remembering that Davidson County and Shelby County were the only counties that offered homicide support with professional counseling. So we were able to secure a grant that now anyone from across Tennessee, if they want to connect with a homicide support, loss support group that's led by a counselor, we have funded that. So we have several counselors across Tennessee that each month they conduct a homicide group. It's really important to process trauma, because if you don't process trauma, it processes you, and it comes out in your life in lots of different ways. And it impacts everybody, really, when it all trickles down. Our agency also has, in 2018, began working on victim assistance for mass violence casualty. There was a national movement for communities to have a plan to assist victims, because when a mass violence event happens, the police go in, they secure the scene, and they're there to solve the crime and to catch the perpetrator and to keep other people from being victimized. And oftentimes what the National Organization for Victims Assistance was seeing was that victims were like the second thought. And so we were working with the Office of Criminal Justice Program since 2018, and we've created a statewide protocol that will be used, that every judicial district will use, so that we can kind of have a, the same thing across the board, and each community will massage it to make it their own. And so we've been working with all of the DAs across the state to get their teams in place. And, we have been assigned to be the go-to people for victim assistance when a mass violence event happens anywhere in Tennessee. So if something happens in Murfreesboro, they're going to call us and we're going to support the boots on the ground to help them, organize the chaos. We've done this. We've worked with the Nashville bombing. We were there on the scene at Covenant. We were there on the scene at Antioch, and we continue the long-term victim assistance plan for them because they're going to need that. It's that their life isn't going to go back to normal in 2 months. And so we just want each community to be prepared. So we're supporting that. We care about victims, and I've had the honor of serving victims of crime for 30 years, and it's truly my passion. But for 22 years, we've also been working with incarcerated men and women. And while I have your attention, I want to tell you what I've learned over the 22 years. I was listening about the youth safety. I wondered, did they go and talk with any of the young people that are locked up right now, that have committed crime, that have created the fear? The reason young people are afraid is because there is a subset of youth that are terribly broken. And giving them after-school programs and opportunities is not going to help them. They have trauma. And again, if you don't resolve your trauma is going to come up in every aspect of your life. We teach a class right now at Deborah Johnson, and they have a unit where the girls are locked down 22 hours a day because they're doing drugs, they're fighting the officers, they're fighting with each other, they're doing anything they can to cause chaos because that's their normal. And we have a class with them, and you know what? Here's the thing. They're remarkable young women, and it's heartbreaking because their normal is chaos, addiction, and violence. That's their normal. And in fact, let me give you an example. We also teach a class at Trousdale with a group of men, a victim impact class, and we've been doing that for over a year. And in all of our classes, we start the same way because what we want the people that are in our class to understand is not just pain that they created, but how did you ever get to a point where you thought it was okay to create that pain? They've got to understand that. And I used to hate to hear somebody say, oh, their childhood was really bad. And I'd say, there's no excuse for that because I know lots of people that had horrible things happen and yet they rose above it. And I don't know why some people can rise above adversity and be great and others sink down into desperation. I don't understand it, but I know that it happens. So in our class, we want them to think, we want them to step outside of their normal. So we talk about how, if your normal is chaos, abuse, and violence and addiction, that's your normal because your brain wants you to survive it. And if that's your environment, whatever your environment is, that's your normal. And we had a guy who was in our class, and he was very well-spoken. He had been incarcerated 30 years. I think he's coming up for parole, but he came up to us afterwards and he said, I've been thinking about what you said about normal. And so he told this story. When I was 6 years old, my mom and I were going over to see some friends in an apartment. And we drove over and we parked behind this car. And just as we're parking, two men come running out of the apartment that we're going to go visit. One is chasing the other. The first man gets to the car that's parked directly in front of us, and he's fumbling to get into the trunk of the car. And he said the second man caught up to him, and he had a knife, and he stabbed him to death. And he said, you know what I was thinking? I'm never gonna leave my gun in the car. He's 6 years old, and he's not flipping out. He's not thinking somebody call the police. He's not thinking, I just saw something really horrible. He's thinking, I'm never going to lock my gun in the trunk of the car at 6 years old. And you know why? Because it was Tuesday. That wasn't anything unusual for him. And so when we're talking to the women, we actually just a couple months ago had a girl in our class, little tiny petite thing, really cute, soft-spoken. And she said, you know what? I have a story like that. She said, when I was 8, she said, I grew up in the projects and I saw somebody killed right in front of me. And she said, you know what I was thinking? I'm always going to have guns and bullets in my gun. And we found out she's spending 30 years now for killing somebody. If we don't address the trauma that these people are carrying around, that's their normal. And if they don't step outside of their normal and recognize it, they're just going to continue repeating that behavior because they're angry. You know what? Crime victims are angry. It's a righteous anger. And these kids that are running the streets, I used to think, oh, they're little punks. These little runaways, these little kids that are running away from home. Yeah, maybe they're punks, but they're punks for a reason. They don't run away from home. They have a reason they're running away from home. One of the girls in our unit was telling me, I ran away from home so many times, and my mom would call DCS, and she said, they'd take me back to my mom, and I'd say, I don't want to go back to my mom. And she said, they'd take me in, and my mom would say, look, she has a closet full of clothes. Look, she has all the shoes that she wants. And she said, she has her own room. She said, but I didn't have what I needed, and that was safety. So I hope that when people are talking about what can we do to make kids safe, that we ask other kids that are incarcerated, tell us what happened. We're not doing that. We're locking them up and throwing away the key. And I used to be one of those proponents, lock them up and throw away the key, because every person that and almost to the point now, almost every victim I know is a victim of a repeat offender. So we're not doing our job. And when we look at these kids and we're not helping them, I can't tell you how I've asked men at Brushy Mountain, I've asked men at Riverbend, I've asked women at Deborah Johnson, what could we have done to help you? And most of them say, well, I get in trouble and then they let me go. And I thought it was a joke. One girl at Deborah Johnson said, I'd get in trouble and then they'd say, call your grandfather from juvenile. I'd call my grandfather and he'd say, one day you got to straighten up, because one day you're going to call me and I'm not going to pick you up. And she was in there for 30 years now because she killed somebody. She said, I want to call my grandfather. And they said, your grandfather can't pick you up this time. So we need to pay attention to what we're doing with the youth that we know are at risk. They're telling us, they're showing us. It's not a joke. And the reason it's important is maybe it's not because they deserve it. It's because we do. All of us do. So it's really important I feel like we have feet in both camps. We see the offenders and they're not getting what they need. What they're getting is how to be a better offender. We see the victims who are re-victimized over and over and over again by repeat offenders. And it's just truly insanity. And when are we going to stop the insanity is my question. So.
Thank you for, thank you for coming and sharing that perspective. And you definitely made some connections to, as we were discussing earlier, around youth safety and our new office. So thank you for doing that. Go ahead.
If you know anyone that's a victim of crime, please tell them to call us because we will connect them to the right agencies. And I always say, if you're going to be a victim of crime, may it happen in Davidson County because our resources are rich. Very, very rich, but people have to be connected. We also have several things on our website. We created a video because the justice system does not make sense. And so we worked with lots of DAs across the state and a couple of judges that from Davidson County. And we actually walk through from the moment a crime happens through the parole process, what can I expect? And so you have different perspectives talking. It's in chapter form. So if somebody wants to know, oh, I'm in this part of my process in the justice system, maybe you can get a little support that way. We also have several other videos. We have videos talking about homicide and why processing your grief is really important. And we have these cards right here that have crime victims' rights on it. And actually next year, we're going to get a chance to vote on an amendment to the Constitution to strengthen victims' rights as well. But you can keep these, and you know anyone that's a victim of crime, please have them call us because it's a very lonely place to be, walking that journey alone, and they don't have to. Victims don't have to do that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And anybody have any questions? Vice Chair Huffman, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Ms. White, for coming here today. I think your organization represents a noble cause for sure. There's no doubt about that. I have one very simple, direct question for you, and it really affects what we do in our body. Are there any specific policies that you think would advocate for or significantly improve, I should say, the public safety of victims?
Well, I appreciate all of you who voted for FUSIS because that was really important. And that was kind of surprising to me that there was even, a dialogue against it. But I do say the license plate reader, seriously, I would just say, go to and sign up for Facebook for Mount Juliet. Almost every day, I'm seeing where Mount Juliet is posting, our license plate reader caught somebody from Nashville who was wanted in Nashville and who was trying to commit a crime in Mount Juliet. Mount Juliet's doing it. I mean, let's look at the big picture. The big picture is we want to keep people safe. And if you apprehend somebody who is out doing crime, their life is out of control. You are not doing them a favor. At least if we have an intervention with them, they are taken off the street. Maybe some innocent person is going to be spared, all the trauma that goes along with being victimized. So I really hope that you'll reconsider, initiating that. There's so many license plate readers across the state. So it just seems really foolhardy not to use that technology. So I'm a strong advocate for that. And I know that it solves crime, and I know that it can prevent crime, because if you get somebody who's out of control, you take them off of the street, they don't have the opportunity to go out and do that with somebody else. And just maybe that intervention can be life-changing for them. I've had some people that I know that have been incarcerated that have got out and they said, prison saved my life. It's not ideal, and you have to want something different because it's hard, but it's doable. So that's two of the things that I would say is that technology is really important. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for your perspective. Any other questions for Ms. Wyatt? Okay, I really appreciate you taking the time to come. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to transition into any department updates. And first, I know for sure we have one because Director Lance is here from the Office of Family Safety. And so you all are welcome to come forward and share your update. Oh, just right back there. Yeah, thank you. Oh, hang on one second. I'm sorry. I turned off there we go.
Great. Diane Lance, Director of Metro's Office of Family Safety. But before Verna leaves, I just want to, express the decades upon decades of good work she has done. She is, I'd say in many ways, if I were to sum it up, her and like Amy, just truly the mothers of the impact of trauma in someone's lives and making sure people understand that in our community and are responsive to it. So, I agree with everything that you said up there, and she has just grown that mission in her work beyond just starting with the downstream problems of the impact on victims, but really going upstream to what's starting these problems and how to intervene there. And then in the mass violence work, which we're privileged to partner with them on as well. So thank you. I just wanted to stop since you were here. So there isn't a more experienced voice than Verna, so thank you.
Thank you for that.
I just want to update you all on a couple things. So this Friday at 10 o'clock, the Office of Family Safety, along with the Mayor's Office, is releasing the 10-year progress update report. So you may remember that the Office of Family Safety was founded out of a safety and accountability assessment done under the Dean's administration. That assessment took 2 years on how law enforcement and court systems could improve victim safety and offender accountability. And that report it's just not been sitting on a shelf and got forgotten as administrations change. It is the working document for our department ever since. We call it a 10-year update because that sounds better than a 12-year update. Took a while to get this report done. It was supposed to be actually a 5-year update. But I'm kind of glad it took us 12 years because we have a lot of strong momentum and are really excited to release the update report. Especially successful, which is why I'm glad we had those extra 2 years, were some of the results that came out of those special meetings that you all held. Those have been significantly impactful, and I'm deeply appreciative of them. Speaking in terms of 8 new positions coming out of that within Metro government, which are specifically targeting problems, deep systemic concerns in our court system, that those are hopefully going to help resolve. So I just wanted to give you an update on where we are on those positions. The first one is 1 position. I know Brenda Gadd pushed really hard for this firearm dispossession position. And that money is now in the police budget. And there was, they are embracing that they are going to be hosting that position and driving forward. And we've had our first meeting collectively, OFS, police, and Brenda Gadd, to talk forward, like getting this started, getting the position hired, and what is the best practice. And we've connected them with the folks in Denver that have a great model that should be really easy for our police to replicate. So I feel like that has some good momentum that I'm excited about. There are the 2 bond oversight positions, and that money was lodged into the OFS budget, even though it will fund some court positions. I think there was a desire for us to handhold those positions to make sure they, evolved as we all wanted them to, and got off the ground quickly. So we've had several meetings so far with courts on this, and that involves a lot of judicial leadership in those meetings. And we basically come down to the positions will be located in General Sessions probation, will be supervised by General Sessions probation. Obviously, the 2 positions will be funded through our budget. We have just a few little hiccups with the judges overall, and so I will be speaking to them next week to better explain what these positions are for and why the money is lodged into our budget. So that is moving along. We collectively worked together on a job description for those positions, which is, good work. 6 commissioner assistants, that is not as directly related to my budget and our work, but it was something we talked about in those special meetings that, you presided over, which were really made a big difference. The fact that they will have NCIC access, do full records checks, make sure the GPS monitor is in place and things like that. So I've only been included in 1 meeting on that. I don't know if there are other meetings, and it is complicated because just the path an offender takes physically in DDC, between the jail and the commissioners, it's sort of hard to know exactly where these assistants will be. So the 1 meeting I've been in attendance, and it may be the only meeting that has been, we're still back at just figuring out where those positions will sit, on the jail side or the commissioner's side. So that one's a little bit more needs just a little bit more. We're not quite to the job descriptions and all that yet, I don't believe, but they could be working on that without me. So basically what I just wanted to say is these are all really complicated things because they all involve systemic work among different agencies. So the bond positions involve probation, our department, the DA's office, the clerks, and the courts all have to work together to launch that program. The firearms dispossession requires police, circuit and criminal courts, and their clerks, the DAs and OFS, all need to work together to get that launched and doing what it's supposed to do. And commissioner assistance heavily involves the sheriffs, the courts, police, and GPS monitoring companies. So that's a lot of stakeholders involved in each one of those initiatives. So I wanted to just ask and recommend for this committee if it is possible, for you all to consider scheduling some update meetings, as a continuation of what was done last October, and maybe schedule, an update on how those 3 pilots are going in October 2025, and then a progress report for January 2026. And the second thing I wanted to recommend is I think it's really important to figure out to make sure that data that would be helpful in figuring out if those pilots are doing what we want them to do and what you all want them to do, that it's really clear what data you're going to hope to receive, or what data you want us to receive from them to turn into some performance metrics for you. So those are just 2 possible recommendations I just wanted to bring up.
Thank you for that. And you touched on something that was kind of on my mind as you were talking about, like the judicial assistants. Who is leading that part of the conversation?
So Judge Todd is the one who is bringing together those meetings, and OFS is bringing together the bond oversight along with the presiding judge, which is now Judge Walker, and will shortly, September 1, be Judge Hayes. And firearm dispossession, I think we're in charge of making sure we all come together, but no, that's just working collectively. No one is really setting agendas as much as we all know what we have to do.
Okay. And then on the judicial assistance with Judge Todd, since I knew he was obviously advocating for it and came here to advocate for it, I saw he advanced to the next level of the, and I don't know the process, the next
trial court.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there a backup plan if he were to be selected of who would take that over, or is it too early to have that idea yet?
I don't know. My guess is it would default to the presiding judge, but that's just my guess.
Okay. But anyway.
Or the presiding judge's designee.
Okay. And so thank you for bringing all that up, because to your point, like, it is super complicated, and we had the support of the mayor and Chair Porterfield on the budget side with her substitute that we passed. And so we need to see some movement on all of these positions to justify, the work that they took to pull them in. And so I appreciate the recommendations that you're providing, I think are really good, and we should look at those. And so thank you for bringing those. And then on Friday for your report meeting, so I understand the mayor will be there and vice mayor will be speaking. Both of them, I believe, are providing remarks. And so we're all invited.
Of course.
And all the whole council is invited,
I have
right?
some invitations for the council that I'll just leave.
You can give them to Vice Chair Huffman.
Great.
Anyway, any questions for Director Lance while she's here? Okay. Thank you very much, Director Lance.
Thank you so much.
And any other department updates? While we're here, I'm seeing nobody shake their head in the affirmative. Any other members have anything they need to share with the committee? Okay. Well, then we will consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.